This is Nancy Ralphsma with On Point TV and Quilting with Nancy, and thank you for joining me for our third live in our summer series. In our summer series, we're going through the techniques used in this quilt. Is that right? So this is the Tranquil Stars quilt designed by my sister Renee, and she and I, actually mostly she, wrote the pattern for that whole entire quilt. It is available on our website, which is onpoint-TV. So if you're interested, you can purchase it as an ebook and save, I think, $10, or else you can get it as a printed book. So we'll be printing it with a comb binding. Also on our website, just FYI, is my pincushion. So this is the pincushion kit that I've had. Move it closer. Okay, too close. Yeah. Athena says too close. So this is the one that I've had for a while with the red wool. I do still have some of the red wool available, but I have done a couple of other ones. So now I have a pink check kind of one. So that was black and white and I dyed it pink. And then also a dark purple one. These are actually made exactly the same, but the red wool was a really, really thick wool. So these just seem a little bit smaller, and what makes them cool is that they've got the magic plastic on the inside that molds, and so that comes with the pattern and or kit. Those are available on the website. Okay, down to business. Sunday, because our Wednesday show kind of failed on us, last Sunday we did a live doing the flying geese blocks in the Tranquil Stars book, and I asked a question. I said, could you please let me know where you're from? And we've got the tally, we've got the results are in. So, of the states in the United States, 35 states were represented, which I think is pretty cool. Although I am wondering where the people from North and South Dakota, Nevada, Wisconsin, although Wisconsin, Ann, aren't you from Wisconsin? I think you are. So I think you just didn't write your name in there, or your state. Connecticut, Louisiana, Vermont, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Mississippi, Nevada, Kansas, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Alabama. I have missed you, so I hope that you would like to join us someday. And then, not that that's not exciting. Oh, and Texas wins. Texas had more viewers than anybody else. Keeping in mind, we're in Michigan, so I think that's pretty cool that all the way down there on the south side is wanting to watch us. Then, the internationals. Of the internationals, Canada wins. Canada had 19 viewers. Thank you very much, Canada. Just so you know, my descendants are from Canada. So that's probably why. Then there's New Zealand. Australia came in second with 9. France, Germany, South Africa, Japan, Argentina, the UK, Russia, Switzerland, Sweden, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, and Ireland. So I just thought that was really cool for you to know. Someday, I want to travel to all of those places and teach quilting. All right. So today we're going to learn how to make a chevron block using a connecting corners technique. So I've got my tall quilt hanger over here, and he's going to hang up a quilt that is not the Tranquil Stars. All right, coming on over here. Okay, babe, come a little bit closer. Athena, can you see these? All right. This is a quilt done by designer Nancy Rink. You can Google search her. She has fabulous patterns. She also writes an exceptional pattern. I mean, of all the pattern writers out there, I want to aspire to be as good as Nancy Rink is. This particular quilt was called Getting to Know Hugh. These are the blocks, or a variation of the blocks that we're going to make today. This is such a cool rainbow border. You've got to love this. It is a similar technique to the flying geese, but it is actually done instead of like coming like this, like a point, in the chevron block, it is done on 2 sides. So we're going to let Bill put that one down now, because that is a very heavy quilt. To use it, okay, Bill, you can swap now. So to use it for, oh, sorry, I just stepped on a kitty and they go up the stairs. Sorry. So that was a very heavy quilt, and I mentioned that because it's a double wool batting. My friend Karen Giles quilted it for me beautifully, and for my bed quilts, I like a double wool batting. It's my favorite. So now we're going to go to the Tranquil Stars quilt. So this one's just a quilt top, so Bill won't be having any troubles holding this up. This is the colorization that I did, and the chevron block, honey, I'm going to fold it. Okay, go ahead, let it down, and take that. There. The chevron block in the Tranquil Stars quilt are these right here. So not really big, and the idea is they're made with 2 rectangles and connecting corner squares on this one. And then there's also, then this in the center star, these are also chevrons done with the rectangles and the 2 connecting corners. All right, so that's where you'll find it in the Tranquil Star book pattern, and that is in month number 1. Okay, all right, babe, you are all done for the day. Thank you very much for your assistance. Okay, so we're gonna move the quilt over here. I want to show you a couple of other ones that have a chevron in them. This is a quilt that I made, I want to say nigh on to 100 years ago, at least 20 years ago. And can you see the chevrons here? So similar to the Nancy Rink quilt, that technique was used in a border, and it's a very, very effective border technique. And with this one, it was the idea of dark light, dark light, dark light. So it kind of gave it that 3-dimensionalness also, okay? And then the last quilt I want to show you has variations on the theme. This is a quilt. I took this class from Beth Ann Williams, I don't know, 20 years ago probably, 15, 20 years ago, back when we used to work at a shop together. That was the best times ever. So this is the quilt, and it was called a Seminole piecing, and you can see that the very top row has a chevron look to it. And as we go a little bit further down, there's that one that instead of being done with a rectangle and a square is done with 2 rectangles, but also still done in the connecting corners technique. So now we're going to, and then the very bottom one. Can you see that one on the very bottom? Look at how the 2 colors give it so much dimension. I love that. I made this quilt a long time ago, but have not gotten it quilted yet. It will, actually, that was small enough. I'll quilt that one myself. So we are ready to start some chevron blocks, and I wanted to show it a little bit differently. Instead of, because I really only have 1 technique this time, whereas with the squares, half square triangles, I have 5 techniques. With the flying geese, I had 4 techniques. With the chevrons, you get 1. Pretty much, there's 1 way to do it. And that's good, because it really, the hardest part about doing chevrons is getting the placement right, so that one is going up this way and the other is going up that way. So instead, though, I'm going to teach you a little bit something about cutting fabric to save as much fabric as possible. When you need to cut rectangles, such as with this kind of a block, even if you're doing the flying geese with the rectangle technique, it is best how do I say this? You're going to save the most fabric if instead of cutting the width of grain, you're going to cut the length of grain, the width. So what I mean, I am going to cut a 4.5 by 2.25 inch rectangle. That's the size we need for the Tranquil Stars, so that's just the size we're going to use today. Instead of cutting the 2.25 inch strip, and then cutting 4.5 inch rectangles out of that, instead consider cutting a 4.5 inch strip and then cut the 2.25 rectangles out of that. So to do that, I'm going to start, okay, are we in position?
Getting there.
Okay, we're getting there. I'm going to start with my fabric folded like I always do. I'm going to line up the horizontal line here on the double fold, scooch it over so I don't have to cut off too much, and this is going to square up my edge. Now I can turn the fabric around, and I'm going to cut a 4.5 inch strip. So cutting the wide strip first and then cutting the squares. You won't save a ton of fabric, but you will save enough fabric. If you're having to make a lot of these of the same color, you will actually save quite a bit of fabric. So with the Nancy Rink one, where all of the rectangles were cut with the gray fabric, I had to cut a lot of that, and this saves a lot of fabric. So now I'm going to use my smaller ruler, and I'm going to power cut my rectangles. So 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4, 2 1/4 plus 2 1/4. That gets me to 9 inches. If this power cutting technique is new to you, you can go to our YouTube channel and find the anatomy of fabric, which was like our first or second video ever, and I really cover a lot of power cutting in there. So here's the idea. You cut once, then you slide it back and cut again. And this is going to make a bit of a faster and more accurate cut if your measurements are correct. Now, 2 1/4, 2 1/4, 2 1/4. I think I can do that, but just for the sake of argument for today, I want to cut this whole strip and see how much fabric we have left over, so that hopefully, because of course I didn't try this ahead of time, it'll save us some fabric, and you'll see a difference. Whoops. And 4 1/2. Now, many times when I'm doing this idea of a power cutting, I will use the glow tape from OmniGrid. I'll put that glow tape on there, so then my measurements are all marked off. Okay, there we go. So this is my last one. So how much can I get out of this? I can get a 2 1/4, and then I think I can get one more 2 1/4 out of this little guy maybe. Let's see, can I? Yes! So if I was doing a quilt that needed many, many, many rectangles cut this size, that's how much I would have wasted. You can't get frugaler than that. So consider that when you're having to cut rectangles. I know that I also covered this when we were doing the sashings for the quilted tiles, but you know what, now that I think of it, that is part of the quilt as you go technique that we recorded, but our sound didn't come out, so we had to re-record it, and we haven't published it yet. But when I do, Gina's laughing in the corner. When we do that again, we will show you. I'll show you that using that in sashings. All right. So now I have my rectangles, and I'm going to take my squares. My squares I have cut 2 1/4 inch, and I have drawn the sew line on the back of it. When you're designing your chevrons, it's really important that your diagonals go in opposite directions. And when you get to your sewing table, oftentimes you forget. So when I'm doing it, I'm going to stack them like this at my cutting table with my diagonals going in the direction that I need them. I also realized from our last video that with our new holder, we don't have a microphone. When we're doing recordings that are live like this, we do not use a microphone. We are using a cell phone. So when we're doing that, we do not have an external microphone. So I'm sorry if I got a little bit quiet last time. I will try to speak a little bit louder. Okay, so after I've put them together in that way, then I'm going to put them on my ruler as I go to my sewing machine. So let's head to the sewing machine. All right, so at my sewing machine, when I do my units like this, I take it and I just set it right next to my machine. And we're just going to go through the techniques. And this one's going to be pretty easy, except I forgot a leader, but that's okay. We'll just live without it. So picking them up. I like to start in the center of the block instead of starting here at the tip. I just find it works a little bit better for the starting of it, especially if you, whoops, I am so sorry. I like totally squished that all over. Okay, now I'm back on track. I like to sew just a smidge, a needle's width, to the outside of the block. In the case of this block, the outside is on the left-hand side. So now I'm going to pick up the other side. So I'll go right side, left side, right side, left side. So here's the next one. So when I'm talking about the outside of the block, here's the sewing line. I'm going to sew here. so that the left-hand edge of my needle touches the ink. Instead of sewing directly on that line, just that little smidge will make your block come out just a little bit more accurate. All right, now I'm going to do another right side. And this time I'm sewing to my left, so it's always that outside corner that you're going to do this with. And then one more for the other one. All right, and so just because, remember that we did this in our flying geese one, I'm going to show you the idea of no waste method. So this little guy. So normally from here we would cut all of this off before or after you press it, depending. But instead, consider sewing just a wide little edge there. I'm going to just fold this one up because we're only going to do one. I need a leader, I need a leader. There, okay. So you can sew that extra little seam here, and then we'll cut down it, and that'll create that little half square triangle. It's one of the techniques I taught you in the flying geese. All right, so now we're going to back up to the ironing board, and Athena is going to try not to step on the cat like I did. That would be cat number 2. Okay. So for this one, where you're using the connecting corners, whoops, you okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay.
I'm just trying to follow you.
Okay, using the connecting corners, if you sew that extra seam, then this is your connecting corner, chevron block. Oh my goodness, I touched the plastic. Boy, I'm just like all thumbs today. And then the half square triangle, this little guy that we made. Tiny little guy, don't know when I'll use him. I'll use him for something else down the road. These other ones, I didn't do that just because you don't have to. So here you can see, oops, sorry, I need to cut them apart. There, back on track. You can see where the diagonals are going in opposite directions, okay? Now some people like to make sure that it's correct first, so you can trim it before you press it. And I'll show you why, and boy, it's a good thing I did because I can see right on this one that I am a bit off. So this guy is pretty darn nice, but look at this guy where I was off here. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to pick him up. Ooh, because I got to change my way I pressed it anyway. See how he's extending over? I'm just going to cut that off. All right. Now I'm going to cut that to the scant 1/4 inch or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Doesn't have to be exact. And this one, but one of these I have to change the pressing. Okay. All right. So when I put these, if I go to put these together now, and they are both pressed up or down, when the seam is right here in the middle, it is going to be very difficult to match that up, and it will be super duper bulky. So what you want to do is change the pressing of one of them. So I will consistently do it to whatever side it is. And for some reason, I personally find it easier to press it to the little guy first and then change my pressing. So now you can see that those seams are in opposite directions. Now I'm going to pick it up and show you how I'm going to pin that. I'm going to take those little guys, and those little seams, they will butt right together, and I'm going to put a, oops, there's a little bit of a bent pin. I'm going to take and put a pin right there to hold that. I'm going to position that, so I'll start sewing there, and then I'll end down at the bottom. So I'm only going to put one pin in, so let's go to our sewing machine. Now for this, I do want to be on my scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I got to move my needle over. Whoops, a little bit far. There. All right. Now I'm going to sew with my scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. You saw a needle just move. I'll get to the end and just cut him off because he's our last guy. All right, back to the ironing board. Cut off my leader fella. So this is where there seems to be a well, not a controversy. Some people do it one way, some people do it the other way, and I'll tell you why I do it the way that I do it. At this point, many people like to then press this seam open to eliminate bulk. You know, if it's in a border and it doesn't then need to be connected to anything else, all right, I'll give you that. You can do that. But all the blocks in the Tranquil Star need to be connected to another block. So I don't want it pressed open. I want it pressed to the point of least resistance. And this is what I mean. If I press this seam to this direction, do you see how it will be resting on top of this seam? So this will be rather bulky. I like to instead press it to the seam that is the least bulk. So going to the left, there is not as much bulk. Now, it is going to be a bulky-ish seam, but this is the way I like to press it. I find it presses much nicer, and I think it will be stronger in your finished quilt because the seam is not pressed open. When you press your seams open, there is the only thing holding the quilt together is the thread. So now, pressing them open, and he's done. So things matched up very, very nicely, and it is really not that bulky right there in the middle. So that was your quick lesson. Today was just one technique. Quick lesson on doing chevron blocks. You saw those other designs that I did, that one from Nancy Rink with the triangles on both sides. Such a cool technique. Consider doing that. Actually, go to Nancy Rink's website and find some of her patterns. I'm telling you, some of the best patterns you'll ever use. Her instructions are really, really fabulous. I think Renee's instructions are pretty good too. So if you're interested in making the Tranquil Stars quilt, be sure to go to our website, onpoint-TV. You can find that there. You can find the pincushions. You also can find the Learning to Quilt series, which is the first 2 years of all of our recordings was for the Learning to Quilt series for that quilt, and some other patterns that are out there too. We will be back next Wednesday, and we will be making a magic triangle block that will have a couple of different techniques. So I hope you would be happy to join us then. Have a great day.